The Put Me in Coach podcast. All right. Welcome in, my friend. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I've missed you. You've been doing a lot with the move. We've had a rough couple of weeks getting on here, but thanks for coming back on with me, man. And it's the halfway point of the year, so let's do some receipts.
Let's do it. I got a lot of them.
We do. I think we can take a couple of victory laps. We'll save that for the next video. I think what I want to do is put myself on trial a little bit here and just kind of own a couple of takes. I think each of us have two teams for this video. I've got one, you've got one that I think we talked about preseason that so far at the halfway point, right? Everything's subject to change, but so far at halftime, we feel like we whiffed on these picks. I'm going to start, if that's okay with you. I'll get your thoughts, and I'll pass it over to you for like your pick or your team. But look, man, this one really pains me to do because to date it is our most successful video. We got a huge following from it. We appreciated every positive comment. I think you and I really put a lot of thought into that video, into this team, and into our picks of, you know, thinking that this team would maybe not be what they were last year, but would still be a good football team that was being kind of disrespected. And when you have a take like that, like we did about the Minnesota Vikings, like I did about the Minnesota Vikings, and this is the product that you're seeing halfway through the season, you feel like a moron. So for all of you that watched our Vikings video and thought that we sounded like morons, this one's for you. This one's for you, because I'm gonna level with you, man. I'm not going to throw this team away big picture, but for this year so far, what I am seeing is really disappointing on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it sucks.
Let's start offensively, because we just got news that Carson Wentz is having season-ending surgery on the shoulder, which was jacked up very clearly last week on Thursday Night Football against the Chargers. He had no business playing in that game. More on that in a second. But one of the narratives that I'm seeing come out of Vikings Central, I'm not saying you guys, if you're a Vikings fan, like, comment, subscribe. Like, we're going to talk about this team more this year if we can. But one of the main talking points that I'm seeing is like, oh, we're cooked now that Carson Wentz went down. And I have such an issue with this because you had Daniel Jones in the building, who is playing as a top 5 quarterback this year with Indianapolis. You had Sam Darnold in the building, who is definitely going to take Seattle to the playoffs this year. Despite my kind of reservations about him and the turnovers and all that stuff, he's still playing overly good football overall. So if JJ McCarthy wasn't ready to play and you had those two guys in the building, why were you ever relying on Carson Wentz, who is washed and has been washed for years, to win you football games this year? I could tell last week in that game against LA that he was completely injured. Like he could barely move. He could barely throw the ball downfield. He looked horrible. So you put him in that situation. He re-injures the shoulder. He's done for the year. You're going back to JJ McCarthy, who was benched with an apparent knee injury that a lot of people feel like was just a quiet benching that they disguised as an injury. You're not running the football well. We talked about it earlier this year during the thing, you know, 2 good running backs. How about no good running backs? Aaron Jones appears to be too old. He's been hurt all year. He has no explosiveness. And Jordan Mason is uninspiring this year running the football. It's just not happening. You can't control the clock because you can't, you know, win in the running game. And you're not winning on third down because your offensive line can't protect. The offensive line is something we talked about this offseason. We liked the additions. We liked the players. Turns out Indianapolis is just Indianapolis, and those guys actually aren't that good. And when you don't have guys like O'Neal and guys like Darrisaw consistently healthy in there, you can't protect. So offensively, you don't really have an identity. I think Jordan Addison, to me, is the only lone bright spot on this team this year so far that I look at and I'm saying this guy's making a difference every week. Justin Jefferson is just getting bracketed. He's been pretty much neutralized this year. I can't think of one big game Jefferson's had this year, one big moment. TJ Hawkinson, whatever. Like, all of these guys, to me, are letting down. And we could talk about, and we will talk about, why, you know, what the intricacies are offensively. Kevin O'Connell's partly to blame for that, too, with some of the play calling. But one thing I talked about a lot preseason in our Vikings video was Brian Flores and this defense. Here's the dirty little secret about Brian Flores. Do you remember a couple years ago in Dallas when Dan Quinn was still the DC and Micah Parsons was still in Dallas and Deron Bland had that all-pro year and Trayvon Diggs had all those picks and they would play these games at home, Dallas, and they would, Micah would have 3 sacks, Deron Bland would have a pick 6, Trayvon Diggs would have a pick 6, and the pundits would get on TV the following day and ask the question, like, is this the best defense in football? And they would look like that at home against bad offenses on Sundays. Dallas was the best defense in football, and Dan Quinn looked like a genius. Then it got to the playoffs, and the Green Bay Packers came into Dallas and made them look like the worst defense in the league. Yeah. And we've seen, since, without Micah Parsons, Dallas is the worst defense in the league. I think the problem I'm having with Brian Flores is against Jake Browning, against Dylan Gabriel, Brian Flores is a genius. This team, he can disguise blitzes. He can disguise coverages. He can just, fool the quarterback. He can force 4 sacks and 5 turnovers and run away with the game. But when Jalen Hurts comes into your crib, or you have to go into LA and play Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh and real coaches and real quarterbacks with real pieces on offense, Aaron Rodgers, right, in the Ireland game, you're outmatched. You're outmatched. And I'm not seeing the run stopping. I'm not seeing the ability to get home against the quarterback that I saw last year from guys like Grenard. And worst of all, man, the corners, do they exist on this team this year? Like, I'm going to pass it to you, but I want it for anybody who's a Michigan fan and remember this. In the early Harbaugh days, we had a defensive coordinator named Don Brown. His nickname was Dr. Blitz. And Don Brown was considered one of the best defensive coordinators in college football. But Don Brown, very much like Brian Flores, had a pattern. And this was before Michigan won the national championships. This was early Harbaugh when Jim was still having some struggles, beating Ohio State, beating the good teams. We would play these early cupcake teams at Michigan, and we would get 5 sacks and a pick 6 and 8 tackles for loss. And it was the same thing, right? All the Michigan fans and the pundits would get on TV and say, is Michigan the national contender this year? Is this the best defense in college football? And then we would go into Columbus against Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. And them boys would put up 50 on our heads.
Literally.
And Don Brown would have no adjustments.
None.
And eventually Don Brown was let go, and, the man that we all know today as Mike McDonald was brought in as Michigan's defensive coordinator, and then Jesse Mintor following that. And Michigan ended up going on a national title run with those guys calling the shots at DC. And it became clear to all of us that Don Brown was in some way, shape, or form always a part of the problem when Michigan wasn't winning the big games.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that Brian Flores is Don Brown. I'm not saying that this defense is the same thing as the Dan Quinn-led defense in Dallas a couple years ago. But boy, doesn't it walk like a duck, man? Like, I just really feel like when it matters, and my final point on this would be, this offense is struggling this year. I talked about not being able to run the ball, not being able to pass protect, and having problems at quarterback. I felt like sometimes last year, the stuff I'm saying about Brian Flores right now applied to last year. But the difference was, before the Darrisaw injury, they were able to get in these back and forth games and win these games offensively, and they're not now. And so what you're seeing is a tired defense that lives on the field. They don't even know what the sideline is at this point. They're on the field so much. And an offense that can't respond. And so it ends up being this thing where even when the defense is playing well, they can't hold up, and the offense can't match what these good offenses are doing opposite. So it's a recipe for losing. And I'm just wondering, before you give me your team, like, what your thoughts are. Are you as disappointed as I am with the way the Vikings have played this year?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think I was more on the cautious side than a lot of people as far as JJ McCarthy was. I didn't know how he would translate to the NFL. And my thing at the beginning of the season, I think even in that video, I said, I think JJ is going to struggle initially, but around like the now point, right? Like week 7, week 8, I felt like he was going to really catch fire, the game was going to start slowing down for him, and that he was going to, get into a groove later in the season. The problem is that he missed the first, he played game 1 and 2, and then he was out for until now. So that, if that is still true, that's now been delayed, 5-6 weeks. So the problem I have is that not only are you fighting an uphill battle because you're already, you guys are 3-4. The schedule moving forward is you have the Lions this week. That's going to be a bloodbath. After that, you have the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. You have the Bears, who are playing better football. Then you go to Green Bay. Then you go to Seattle. Then you come back home and play the Commanders. Then you go to Dallas and play the Cowboys and the Giants. And then you have the Lions and Packers back to back. There's not a lot of hope in that stretch as far as, playoff hopes, division hopes, anything like that. And the vibe with the team is just awful. Don't you feel like that? Don't you feel like the vibe with the team? It feels like everybody is seemingly very frustrated. Rightfully so. I mean, I said this in our initial video too. This is a win now team. This was brought, those O-line pieces, that was win now. The defense, that was win now. This isn't a rebuilding team. This isn't. I know a lot of people were running laps last year saying, "Oh, we were 14-3 in a rebuild year." No, you guys were already good. You really just needed a better quarterback, and Sam Darnold has proven to be a lot better than Kirk Cousins, obviously. And then for some reason you didn't keep Sam Darnold. You moved on to JJ McCarthy, and I think that
or Daniel Jones.
Or Aaron Rodgers, who was like waiting around for 6 months to see what you guys ended up doing. It's all really frustrating stuff, honestly. Particularly if you're a Vikings fan. I lived in St. Paul for a minute. Like I don't dislike the Vikings, even though we're diehard Lions fans. Justin Jefferson's one of my favorite players in the league. So it's not a team that I necessarily root against like I would Green Bay or Chicago. But I just feel for the team right now. I feel for the entirety of that team because they know what they had last year, right? And yeah, we can. I think there is a little bit of forgetfulness when it comes to those last two Sam Darnold games. Obviously, the one in Detroit for the division, that was essentially a playoff game. And then you had the actual playoff game where you had to go out to LA as a 14-win team on the road, and then you got your lunch taken by Matthew Stafford. It is a bummer, but man, shit, at least you were there. Darnold put you in a position to at least win the division, or at least win a playoff game. Right now, I'm not very confident the Vikings are going to make the playoffs. And if they snuck in, I feel like that would be, lunch, just an easy lunch for whoever's the 2 seed, right? Because I'd have to imagine you'd be the last seed. So I don't know. There's just not a lot of hope when I look forward at this team. I think JJ, I think he might suck. I don't truly know yet. I think it's too early to really determine that. He really struggles to go left at all, and I think defensive coordinators kind of figured that out already. This whole vibe with the high ankle sprain, but he's dressed, but he's quarterback 3 in an emergency situation. It all just feels funky. And I don't know what to make of it, to be totally honest with you. Again, it feels like Kevin O'Connell is very close to losing that locker room if he already hasn't done that. Not to say he should be fired. I think he's a really good coach, but I think sometimes you do just kind of like call it a year at the halfway point because of what's going on. And I think if you lose to Detroit this weekend, you have to go into Detroit. That's tough. And then you play the Ravens, who are also kind of in your situation, trying to save the season, but they got a good win last weekend. So they're kind of building off of that. If they win this weekend, I don't know. We'll see. It could be curtains for the season here very quickly.
I'll close it with this because I think you're right, and I think one tiny thing that you mentioned that I think is really important that I didn't, the vibes in the locker room and Kevin O'Connell, because this is one thing that I think is really, really important here, because one of our big things with this football team was culture and the symbiotic relationship between the GM Adolfo Menza and Flores and Kevin O'Connell, and kind of this marriage and this culture being excellent. I mean, the decisions that they made this offseason at the quarterback position that were made by the front office and Adolfo Menza have trickled down into the head coaching room, which has trickled down into Brian Flores, and you can see watching this team, it is not the same energy that it was last year.
No.
And that is not bro science. That is not us just like
No,
doing
I
a
was
Skip
like,
Bayless vibes check
I was
thing. It
straight
is a fact.
I was straight annoyed with that team last year because they were good, right? Like
Yeah.
we beat them head to head in Minneapolis, right? And that was a really good game, if you remember. And I mean, it came down to the wire, and then they just kept winning, and we kept winning, and it was like, God, are these guys going to fall back at any point? And it literally comes down to week 18, where that was the division, and obviously we know what happened at that point. And that's not to rub dirt in your faces. Neither of us want a playoff game, but those teams were super fun last year, and it was fun competition, right? And it sucks to see this team in this kind of state right now, because I think if you do just keep either Jones or Darnold in the building, it's probably a different story, right?
Yeah.
So
yep.
I don't know.
And
it sucks, man. Sometimes teams only get 1 year windows.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens moving forward. I'm interested to see how JJ McCarthy looks the rest of the year, going into next year, and we'll reevaluate from kind of based on how this team finishes. But I'm with you. I'm kind of off them in terms of the way I viewed them this year, which was like a 6-7 seed, like a team,
like a real problem 6-7 team, like kind of how they were last year, right? It's like, oh fuck, like I got
right. And right now, based on the way the seating is today, right? We talked about this, subject to change. I mean, we're halfway through the year. Everything's going to be different than we think it is, but right now that's the Niners, and I think the Niners are better than them. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. But give me a team. I feel like I know who your answer is going to be, but is there anyone halfway through that you're
not leaving the NFC North?
Who you got?
Yeah, I got the Packers, man. I gotta kind of eat my. Well, okay. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a mulligan here, because I went on record, a few months ago. It was probably like a month before the season started, maybe, and I just said I'm not impressed by the Packers, and that I had them missing the playoffs. And we got a lot of shit for that. We got a lot, particularly I did, because I was very confident, no, this team sucks. I'm not impressed by this team. And frankly, at the point I said it, I still stand by that. Problem is, then 3 weeks later, they traded for Micah Parsons, and he's completely shifted their defense, right? I mean, my big thing with them was, hey, your secondary sucks. Your pass rush sucks. So what's the plan on defense? It couldn't all be Edgerrin Cooper and Kenny Clark. That was not going to get the job done. Obviously, Kenny Clark plays for the Cowboys now. Micah Parsons comes in, which alleviates, Rashawn Gary to one-on-ones and makes the cornerback's job a hell of a lot easier, because Nate Hobbs looks like a fucking MVP right now, because you have an actual gazelle on the other side of the edge from Gary. So I don't know. I mean, they're obviously the 1 seed currently. My take was that they weren't going to make the playoffs. I think I can pretty confidently say they're going to make the playoffs right now. But I'm not do you feel like they're world beaters?
No, but I don't
feel like they're world beaters.
I do think that you're valid to give yourself a bit of a break with the Parsons, because your game did happen before,
right? I mean, you get a top.
But I do think obviously we all felt like when that trade happened, it would be a game changer. I think it's lived up for me. Yeah. I think he's made a massive impact.
Yeah, I think he's won 2 of those games pretty much by himself.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Particularly the one, not the Steelers game, but whoever they played. Who was it last week that he had 3 sacks and
the Cardinals
100 pressures? Yeah, it was whatever it was. Yeah, he had 3 sacks and a million pressures, and he's just one of those. He's a force multiplier. He's just one of those guys, and there's not many of those guys in the NFL in general. I right now, I mean, it's so much, we're really going to find out, and they have such a favorable schedule too. If you look at their schedule moving forward, it's really not super crazy tough. They really handled Pittsburgh in that fourth quarter on Sunday. It was a close game going into the fourth too, and they just pulled away.
That was a big measuring stick game for me.
It felt like Aaron was going to come into town. Well, yeah, I think the Steelers might suck, but it definitely felt like one of those where Aaron was going to come into town, and it was going to be emotional, and it was going to be close, and And I mean, for 3 quarters, it was. I mean, give credit to the Steelers, but man, when push came to shove, the Packers really just stomped on their necks. And I think this team. My worry with the Packers is that they're young. You know, we hear about this every year. They're the youngest team in the NFL. They're the youngest team in the NFL. The problem with being the youngest team in the NFL is that you don't have the closing ability always. And I feel like that's what we've seen this year. Like we've seen them struggle. Obviously, they lost to Cleveland. That's a terrible loss. They're better than Cleveland. They couldn't put it away against Dallas, and they struggled to close. And then I saw what they did to Pittsburgh, and you're like, okay, shit. You know what I mean? Like they got a little taste of how to close a game. You know, like can you do that against a better opponent than Pittsburgh? I think Pittsburgh's like such a middle of the pack team, but they're not trash by any means. So it was a good win. I'm really excited to see. I mean, this division it's Detroit and Green Bay, right?
I think we can safely put it there now. I think.
Yeah,
I feel confident.
The other two are in the rear view looking. So yeah, I think it's gonna be really interesting to see this team moving forward. I mean, they're obviously playoff bound, and they're gonna be tough. Whether they win the division and they have a home game, or they're going on the road as a wild card. Does it really matter? I think I would expect them to win either scenario, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I think the big thing for us was that I think the two pillars that we were really, really asking going in, because obviously when we talked about Green Bay, it was before the Parsons trade, and it was always kind of like, who's your game wrecker on defense? Well, that's Parsons.
Yeah,
but the big question was also like, you know, in that receiving room offensively, like who's the guy that like you go to in these moments? And you know, we saw flashes of it last year, but nothing like this, man. I think Tucker Kraft has emerged as kind of a top 3 tight end in football.
He had a hell of a game.
But he's done this multiple times. He did it against the Commanders. He did it against the Lions. He's done it like multiple times this year, where he's kind of taken over the ball game. And
he stepped up big time.
My take about, you know, the Jaden Reed injury being a big deal has proven true. He's been off the field all year. Like I've said, I'm not a big believer in Romeo Doubs. I'm not a big believer in Christian Watson. I mean, Christian Watson just got back. Romeo Doubs has been good, but it's been, you know, up and down. And Matthew Golden, so far has been kind of a miss as a first-round pick as a wide receiver. Yeah. But this team is interesting in the way that they just, whether it's Jacobs or Kraft or Love, you know, if Love plays bad for 3 quarters and then he figures it out and they get hot enough and the defense, they're finding ways to win. But I mean, they wouldn't be my Super Bowl pick, but I do think based on what we saw this year, what we thought about this team this offseason pre-Parsons trade, they've exceeded my expectations so far.
For sure.
They have. They look really good. And I'm with you. I think it's definitely a 2-team race. Yeah,
2-team race. I'm super excited for Thanksgiving. I think Detroit's going to crack their skull. I'm going to be honest. I really do. I'm sorry. I think they're going to. I think they want their get back from week 1. But week 1 happened, right? All I can do is hope they could come into Detroit and win. We've seen it before. Even on Thanksgiving, we've seen it. So it's not out of the realm to happen. But yeah, I think that's like the miss that comes to mind. You know, like the one that I really was like, I'm putting my foot in the ground. I'm not going to be wrong about this. And then they're like, hey, so we brought Micah Parsons in. Like, oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's valid.
Video, delete the evidence.
Yeah, it's valid. I mean, look.
Well, they needed to, right? I mean, it was my whole take. It was like, you don't have an edge rusher. Your defense is suspect still.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of inconsistencies still with Jordan Love, the same way I was last year. I think this team, there are some bigger things when it comes to like Super Bowl picture. That is a different conversation for me. I mean, but in terms of like regular season so far, they're a top 1 to 5 team in the NFL right now, and there's no denying that. So I don't know. Shout out Cheeseheads.
Yeah. All
right, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for hanging out. We'll be back with some more content very soon. So thank you guys. Thanks for being patient, and peace.